Welcome to Waiting on the Trade, a monthly comics book club for people who can't keep up with monthly comics. I'm Matt Ledger.
I'm Patrick Fitzgerald Fleck.
And I'm Jonathan Gurney.
This month we're talking about Die, a recent Image Comics release by Kieron Gillen, Stephanie Hans, Clayton Cowles, and Rian Hughes. Now, in case you all need a refresher, Die is a story in which a group of 40-somethings relive the horrors of their teenage years, except those horrors are actual factual D&D style horrors, not just like getting shoved into lockers and stuff.
It's real emo. It's real. It's graphic. It's great. It's exactly what I think my 40s are going to be. So
It's what you want your 40s to be, is that what you're saying?
I think it's an inevitable.
That's pretty dark, Matt.
It's pretty inevitable, yeah. I mean, you're going to get sucked into a D&D.
The way the world is going, I think I would prefer the world of Die.
At least, you know, like, your 40s will be beautifully illustrated then.
My God. It's gorgeous.
The art in this is really something. I think when you recommended that I read this, Matt, I did a little bit of Googling on it, and it was described as goth Jumanji.
Yep,
Yes.
yeah.
And I feel like that's a really sort of good way to describe it, and also doesn't describe it at all.
It's not even close, right? Like, I was writing up my notes today of, like, how would you pitch this to someone? And I'm like, when I think of Jumanji, I don't think of, like, character beats. I think of rhinos stampeding down streets, right? Like
Exactly. And Jumanji also looks like a terrible board game to play. Like, I wouldn't. It's like when somebody gets Monopoly out and wants to play it with you. It looks like it would just be you just roll the dice and that's
Roll and move games. So boring.
yes, exactly.
Whereas I started reading this RPG, and it seems pretty good,
Yeah.
actually.
I have too. Yeah.
Exactly. What they've created here is much richer. With rules that can be bent by the players. You know, they can hit the players hard, but then they can also really enable the players to do stuff that they certainly can't do in the real world.
So I don't want to get too far into it before we have you introduce yourself, Jono, but, like, basically the fact that, like, the story influences the mechanics, which influences the story, which influences the mechanics, is what makes this, like, an A+ comic for me personally, because I'm definitely, like, a game mechanics guy and a comics guy, so, like, This is the space I want to live in.
Yes, I agree. So I have played a fair few RPGs in my life, and I think one of the people that we mutually know, a guy called Josh, he was the sort of he could run games that were very similar to this, where, you know, if you could convince him that your character could do this or would do this, he wouldn't try and put barriers in your way. He would just let it play out, and that often meant that we died horribly. But at least we died because of decisions that we made.
Choices you made, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, Pat and I played a game with Josh back here in the U.S.
A couple times.
I don't know if our listeners know this yet, but Jono, you're over there in Australia.
Yeah. Okay. Wait.
Great. Sorry, probably should.
Time out. Let's actually do an introduction before we go any further.
How dare you, Pat?
I just,
How dare you force narrative structure on this
Pat,
podcast?
somebody has to railroad, and it's going to be you.
I was gonna say, I know who our DM is right now.
You're going to get to the encounters I designed because I put time in. Damn it! I don't care if you want to go somewhere else.
Okay, so yes, my name is Jonathan. I do live in Australia, Western Australia specifically. More specific than that, in Albany, which is a small town in Western Australia. And I met Matt at Murdoch University at the same time that I met Callum and Josh, who we've just been talking about. I guess I didn't read comics growing up because I grew up in Zimbabwe, where you don't really have comic book shops. But I did have access to things like Calvin and Hobbes and a lot of Dilbert and things like that an uncle would buy. So I'd read a lot of those. And then really, I think when I started hanging out with you guys at Murdoch, that's when I sort of found out that there was comic book shops in Perth, which I probably should have known sooner. You guys really introduced me to a lot of other sort of comic books. So yeah, that's me in a very small nutshell.
I specifically remember us taking, like, train rides into Perth. It was just like the three of us, you, me, and Cal, who hosted our My Love Story episode. And like just the three of us were basically going to go to the comic shop, and like that's what we were going to do that day. And those were pretty great trips.
Yes, those were amazing days. Literally no other responsibilities. I mean, maybe some uni assignments, but like no other responsibilities, and we could just go and enjoy ourselves there.
Yeah, that was pretty good. And then you'd kind of like fallen off comics since then, right? I know you had a tough time like getting a hold of stuff too.
That's right. So moving to Albany did mean giving up the comic book shops of Perth. It's only a 5-hour drive if I want to go and buy something. But I still keep up with a lot of web comics. Those have certainly been a great sort of stopgap, so to speak. But then Matt introduced me to Comixology, the app, which I had no idea existed, and that has once again I'm back on the bandwagon. Been slowly working my way through Love Story and obviously Die, and then just gonna really see what else I can get my hands on.
What else are you excited to read in the near future? Do you have like a list at all?
Well, you see, I'm a bit difficult because I don't really enjoy superhero comics as much. Mostly because I think that there's just this. It's really intimidating as someone who sort of hasn't kept up with them over the years to sort of get into them. So I think the only one that I probably would really want to keep following is Ultimate Comic Spider-Man. I don't know how far along it's gotten since I last read it. That was Brian Michael Bendis writing Spider-Man, almost a reboot that they did for the Ultimate Universe in Marvel Comics, and I really, really enjoyed that. And I've really enjoyed all of the developments that he's sort of had up to and including the new Spider-Man. So I probably want to keep reading that. I am looking forward to picking up Seconds, which you guys have covered in a previous episode by Brian Lee O'Malley. Very keen to read that as well. Really probably be following this podcast pretty closely for other recommendations because that's really what I need.
We'll have more stuff. Might have some more stuff before the end of the episode too. We've got a couple things on deck for like if you like Die, read this.
Yes, there's actually a great webcomic that I'll talk more about when we get to that part of the podcast.
Ooh, I wonder if it's the same one that I have.
Ooh.
It probably is. If it ends in world, I think it probably is the same one.
It's not. That's great.
Oh, even better. That's great. Yeah. So I do look forward to those recommendations.
Yeah, webcomics is actually like one of my blind spots, so I'm very excited for both of those actually.
Yeah, and webcomics have been an interesting one because I think even when I'm back in Zimbabwe, it's one of the few that I keep up with. And there's really some fantastic stories and stuff that are told in that webcomic format that I'd love to buy the books of those, put it that way. Like, even though I can get it all for free online, it's one of those sorts of things that I would definitely enjoy rereading again and again.
That actually like kind of segs into Die because I had access to the single issues of this as they were coming out, and I was paging through them, and I read a couple of them all the way through, and I was like, okay, this is good. I'm going to buy the trade when it comes out. So I kind of was waiting to read, especially like issue 4 and issue 5, I think, until the trade actually released.
And that's a really good choice because sometimes with trades, there'll be lots of alternate art and stuff at the back of the trade, which is always nice to see. But I think the thing that I really liked about this trade, and please let me know if this is the same for you, was that the artist and the writer, so Kieron Gillen and Stephanie Hans, had actually written essays about the world of Die and things like that, and it really sort of fleshed out the process that they went through to bring what was clearly quite a cool idea into quite a beautiful collection. Yeah,
so normally those sorts of essays actually like people don't collect in their trades for Image because they want you to buy the single issues to get those. So like if they hadn't been collected in the trade, I probably would have bought the single issues online because I also bought it through Comixology. Mm-hmm. But seeing that the essays were going to be in the trade anyways made it easier to get the trade, which was nice from a buyer's perspective at least.
Yes, and that is, I guess, as somebody who does not have a huge background in comic books, something that is friendly to the buyer is also quite important to me.
Yeah, yes. But like I basically couldn't avoid this book when it was announced. Like I get Kieron Gillen's newsletter because I'm signed up for it. I read Wicked and Divine, which is one of his other series, and there was like a 3-page trailer for this series in there. And then also like There was,
Oh,
yeah,
the
in
issues
a
or in
single
the?
issue, yeah.
Okay.
So you're probably not caught up to it yet, Pat. But yeah, there's like a 3-page trailer, and I think it was like issue 30 something or whatever
Awesome.
for Die.
It's like well deserved as well. I think it's clear that the work that's gone into this there's been a lot. It's not something that he's just come up with this year and decided to publish. It's clearly something that's sort of percolated for a good few years.
Well, it's the perfect time to release it too. D&D has never been as popular as it has been these past few 5 years.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Even, via official Wizards of the Coast numbers, I think both like Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering, which is a game I play a lot of, had like their best years in like 2018 and 2019 because people are just like getting into all that stuff at this point.
Yeah. And that's another thing. I mean, I might not have access to a comic book shop in Albany, but we do have a first-rate board game shop that has regular D&D nights, regular Magic the Gathering, all those sorts of things that are probably a bit more social. It's a huge space where people come together and they play those. So, that's sort of even in country Australia, that's happening.
I was gonna say, we've kind of talked about like our individual sort of like RPG or game experience. I know I've played D&D itself like a couple times at this point in my life, and then other RPGs like things. I ran a Dungeon World campaign for a bit that Pat was in.
Yep.
I'm playing a Star Trek Adventures campaign that Pat's running right now.
I mean, we did one session. Let's not call it a campaign yet.
Well, now we have to finish it because it's recorded.
It's recorded. It's going to happen.
Let's see. I know when we were in Australia, we played. I can't remember what it was. It was a noir one. Yes, it was World of Darkness.
Yeah. That was also a really good one. That's again, the focus is more on narrative than on mechanics. And recently, I think they got in a little bit of trouble because they sort of almost veered into some of the territory that Die covers in some of the sort of the trickier issues. So I think that the publisher is kind of sort of taking a look at how they sort of phrase things and stuff like that, which is just more proof, I guess, that these sorts of things are becoming so widespread that you do kind of have to take your audience into account. It's not just not just the audience will find it. It's so widespread now that you've kind of got to think about how you're representing people. Yeah, and I think part of what people are picking up on as these games are becoming more and more popular is that it's not just rolling dice and monsters and stats and level advancements. Like, it's a narrative tool, and like it's a tool for teaching people how to accept and process change. Like, there's a lot of yes-anding in role playing. Yes, yeah, it's very much an improvisation, isn't it?
Well, it's also so varied. Think of any kind of like fantastical setting or even historical or modern day setting you want to do, and there's probably an RPG that's made for that.
Yeah,
exactly.
Or they can be easily tweaked to be that. So
or
it's
you
pretty
can
great.
Make your own, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is like what's on display here, right? Like, there's a 170-page RPG behind this 5-issue, like the 5 issues worth of comics we've read so far, which is nuts to me. Like, it just makes me feel like an inadequate writer. As a person who writes things sometimes. I do get that feeling as well, yeah. I suppose that's probably one of the more selfish reasons that I used to love playing Dungeons and Dragons and DMing, was because it's a chance to force people to basically read your story. Right. which is, I hope that I wasn't as bad as that, but I definitely sort of, I will absolutely put my hand up and say that is one of the reasons I love playing Dungeons and Dragons, is for that purpose.
Yeah, I wonder if Kieron sort of, I don't want to say cheated, but like, you can run a campaign of Die and it sort of writes the story for, like, the encounters that he could run. Like, I don't know, the first encounter with the Fallen they have in issue 2, you could run that in a game with players to get you ideas for the issue. It's like an interesting.
But did you notice he actually just like completely skips that battle because he's like, oh, this is the boring intro battle that everyone has in their first D&D campaign, and it's just like he's kind of establishes everyone's powers. There's that really like beautiful shot of Angela in her Neo costume, but then like basically when Matthew's sword fires up, they just skip from there because he's like, nah.
Exactly, and I think that's almost a running theme. Is once Matt's sword gets going, it's pretty much
over. Yeah. I don't know. I'm glad that Kieron kept with the tradition of paladins being the most boring class to play.
Yes.
That's rude, man.
I'm sorry. It's just how I feel.
I was actually going to try to start us on the path of like who's your favorite character rather than talking about the intricate.
I think the
world building of it
character
all.
Matthew is great. I think the class
Yes, absolutely.
Grief Knight
Yeah.
is just a magic sword that insults you. That sounds
It's
like something
fun.
from Adventure Time. Like
I
come
was
on.
because when I was doing my research for this, I did come across an article where some like a website was playing the game with Kieron, and
Mhm.
he talks about the Grief Knight, and the way that he talks about it. And I don't know if this will come more into play as Die unfolds, but he mentions that the Grief Knight can power their thing with emotions, but you know, it's once those emotions are taken, they're gone. So it's almost like, will the Grief Knight, you know, once they return to wherever, are they actually able to feel stuff, or are they sort of
Oh,
boiled
interesting.
dry? Yeah.
Oh, see, that hasn't like quite come through yet, so I'm interested to see that come through.
Ash makes Matt upset about his mother's funeral, so like when he comes back, that's not something he'll feel sadness
But
from
then it's
anymore.
gone, yeah. Huh.
Potentially, yeah. I think the example that he uses is because the emotional thing is actually a spectrum. So the example that they used was that they had a joy night. So the
Yeah,
joy night uses somebody's memory of their wedding day or something like that, and then that memory is gone, or that emotional thing
Like
is
the
gone
connection to it,
forever.
right? Like you would
Yeah,
remember the
exactly.
day, but not remember like the emotions associated with it. That'd be terrible.
Yeah, that is much scarier.
Yeah, actually, like I'd rather the whole memory be gone, I feel like, than not have the emotion associated with it.
Which is a theme again later on, as we see.
No, I looked up the wheel of emotions today, and I was also thinking about like how D&D characters can shift alignment. I wonder if like Matthew will be able to like shift emotions potentially in the series. That was something
I
that
hope
kind of
so, because it
interested me.
does not seem like it's a particularly healthy class to play.
No, right?
no.
His journey from issue like 2 to issue 5 too is very, I don't know, just like interesting in that in issue 2 he's very much like, Ash, don't talk to me, don't make me feel sad, and in issue 5 he's just like, give it to me. He's just like, we
Yeah,
got to get this done.
yeah, exactly.
And
Wants
also I
to
think
go
he's
home.
kind of already feeling it. Anyways,
Were either of you sort of disappointed when I was reading the comic? I thought it was interesting that in the beginning, Solomon lets his players create their classes themselves. Like it doesn't give them direction on what you want to be. He's like, okay, build your character.
Mhm.
I was sort of disappointed when I read the RPG that those are the set classes in the RPG. You don't get to make your own.
I mean, like, there's a little bit of a difference between what you can do in a comic and what you can do in like a game system, right?
Sure.
And I think the justification that they mention is that every game of Die, that the RPG that you play, is continuing the story that the players establish in the comic book. So you're not playing it as Matt and Patrick and things like that. You're playing it as people who've heard the story about the characters in Die. You know, these kids that disappeared for 2 years, and then
Okay.
that's so. I think that might be some of the justification, but I mean, also probably mechanical wise, yeah.
Sure.
It is also still weird though, in that like the players in both systems, like both the comic system and the game system, don't actually choose their class. The game master chooses the class, like regardless.
Okay, that is quite a big difference, yeah.
Yeah, which is like if I sit down to play a D&D and I want to be a bard, like I normally want to be a bard, right? Instead, it's I created my character, and then the game master is like, oh, that sounds like Terror Knight or whatever. here's the D8, the only D8.
Yeah, that is a pretty big difference. I agree. Yeah.
Oh my god, you could be an annoyance knight. I would be an annoyance knight.
I'm not. Oh, okay. That's like at the far end of the. I think you mainly have to be the stuff in the middle, and there are some words swapped out where like joy is a better word than ecstasy, so therefore joy night instead of ecstasy night. Because like, what the hell is an ecstasy night?
Ooh, trust. I would not want to be a trust knight. That would, especially if you lose it afterwards.
I was trying to figure out today like how a trust night even functions, and I'm super interested in seeing one, honestly.
Right. Like at the same time, I find it boring. It is like the application of it's cool. Like trying to figure out how it would work, but paladins are always just lame. So I just don't.
Absolutely, yeah. They can try and pretty it up, but it is still ultimately what it is. Yeah.
I don't know. It creates a really interesting relationship between Ash and Matthew specifically, who I feel like have more going on than even we've seen so far in the series.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
Especially based on some of the like cuts between their dialogue and stuff in various issues. I think like issue 4 in the pub comes to mind. Like, I feel like there's more there, and like Ash is actually the character we know the least about, despite him / her today being the main character.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think, I don't know if it's something because Ash is the main character while you're in Die, but the Dictator seems OP as shit.
That would be my character choice, yeah.
I mean, like, compared to the Master, though, the Master's OP as shit.
Well, the Master's the Dungeon Master, so yeah, he's OP. That's my question. Like, what I have a list of questions is basically what my notes are for this. And one of them is when they first got in there for their 2-year stint and they were just players with Solomon with them as a master.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a grandmaster who was like overarching story was probably what they were playing, but he was still a master. Could he like make encounters easier for them?
I would assume so, yeah. I would assume he had powers, but to a lesser degree.
That's right, and I think he runs out. He doesn't have like limitless power, so he can only do a few things at once, and then he has to.
He can't rewrite rules, but he can work within them.
Yeah, bend them but not break them.
Right.
Yeah.
He's like at the end of his resources because he's done so much within the world in the like 30 years they've been gone, to the point where like even when he's bending things, he can only bend them slightly.
Which is perhaps a good talking point for us is for the audience, perhaps, is to look at so it starts the book starts with them as teenagers gathering on somebody's birthday.
It's Ash and Saul, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Ash and Saul, that's right.
I didn't realize that Saul's birthday was the same day.
Yeah, they share a birthday.
They share a birthday, which is why they go around his house to have the party, I guess. And that's where they sort of get together and they're sort of talking about how they want to play something that's not cookie cutter Dungeons and Dragons, because that's what they think that they want. And of course, that's when they get sucked into the game and we don't see anything of what happens to them in the 2 years that they're gone. They reappear, minus one of their party. And then we have another time jump of 25 years before
immediately. You get one or two pages of them reappearing after 2 years, and the next page says 25 years later. It's like, whoa, slow down. Okay.
So time has moved quite quickly for them in the first few pages of this comic, and then I guess that's how it's such a great introduction to seeing some of the consequences of what they did 25 years earlier as they get sucked back into the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the key there, as we were discussing, is the character type. So they've got how many? They've got 5 different character, or 6 if you count the Master. But they've got the Fool, the Godbinder, the Dictator, the Grief Knight, and then is it the Neo or is it the Cyberpunk?
Neo. The
Neo,
which is a cyberpunk.
Which is a cyberpunk. So is Neo? So like I associate Neo with the Matrix because obviously that's Keanu Reeves' character. But was Neo used previously? Was it used in sort of Neuromancer or something like that?
I think it's just supposed to be a reference to like, this is the character, like the character type that sort of breaks out of traditional fantasy stuff, right? Like the character uses fairy gold, but like to build techno dogs, right? Like this is the character that's kind of arching you towards, say, like a Shadowrun or like a Worlds of Darkness or like anything that's not typical D&D, right?
Well, it's the stereotypical, this person wants to break my game by playing a character that doesn't make any sense.
Wouldn't know what that's like.
So I'm just going to try to fit this into my game as best as possible. You can be called the Neo. You use elf gold to do crazy things. Go for it.
Pat, do you remember that time we were playing Fiasco and Kat wanted to be a polar bear?
Okay, so it was a science base in the Antarctic, and all of a sudden the scientists all turned into anthropomorphic bears because Kat's like, we're going to be bears. It's like, okay,
not all of them. There was just one talking bear.
I swear to God, it was all of them, man. It was like a zombie apocalypse of like polar bears.
I remember Josh being very patient with Callum and I when we decided that David Bowie was going to be a deity in the D&D campaign that we were playing. And he even made several appearances.
Guys.
As long as it's David Bowie from the Labyrinth, I'm all for it.
Yes, no, it was absolutely Labyrinth David Bowie as well. Yeah,
great.
Checks out.
He's juggling those glass balls. It's great.
He was everything we wanted him to be, and that was just I think that's the mark of that sort of great DM who can kind of they might roll their eyes, but they still let it happen.
And like able to straddle that line where it doesn't actually break the game, because you can try to incorporate those things and then it does break the game.
Absolutely, yeah. So we know the Grief Knight is nobody's favorite character. So
okay, actually, though, it was on my list for favorite character.
I like the character Matt. I hate the class Grief Knight.
Yeah,
like the background of the character who's gone through some shit, and like the story that he tells about when were you the bravest was great, because it wasn't like it was back to back with like adventure stories of being brave, and then his was trying to be brave when his daughter's life was in danger, because he can't show the fear that he's feeling because he doesn't want his daughter to be scared. And it's like, oh
yeah, that was a very affecting story as well. I like, it's sort of one of those kind of very quiet, and he tells it so quietly compared to the others. It's all sort of boastful stories of courage like that, and his is a much quieter and far braver than the ones that have come before him.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Matt would probably get my vote for a person that I hope doesn't die in horribly. But I think class-wise, I'd probably cast my vote for either the Godbinder or the Dictator.
See, I don't like bards. And like the Dictator is basically has one spell, it's like it has suggestion and it just uses it all the time.
I mean, and also like a 5-finger death punch.
Yes.
That's a ridiculous weapon.
It was pretty cool to turn the page and just see that like red flame flaring up out of her arm, though, right?
Exactly, and I think the journey from not wanting to turn things into a war to getting to that point was quite quickly that they sort of went from we didn't want to immediately go to that point to now we've had enough.
We're there.
And I mean, it's such like an intimate weapon too, right? In the same way that the Dictator's like emotional manipulation is intimate, like you have to be close to the person to use it.
Is that built into the Dictator class, or is that something Ash got for herself?
I'm not sure, honestly. I didn't read enough of the RPG to know, but I assume it's built into the Dictator class.
Because like her character design is interesting because she has the long white hair, but I think half of her face is like burned or something. She definitely has like a red eye.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then it kind of always has that flame, that Phoenix flame effect when she's using her powers.
Yeah,
too.
she even references that it feels like she's breathing fire when she uses the
God,
voice.
that was such a good set of lines.
It's very quotable. Oh, there's so many good lines in the comic. Yeah.
I mean, that's a Kieron Gillen comic, though. They are infinitely quotable.
Yes.
So I've not read any of Kieron Gillen stuff before, so I'm assuming that everything is of the same high watermark. So every single comic that I read now of Kieron's will be judged by the same point.
I would say, honestly, all the stuff that I've read, and like I've read a decent amount, but not all, is like of the same quality. Yes, like it's all very good.
Of the one other series that I've read, it's pretty good. Yeah. No, I wouldn't. I don't think I'd be the Dictator, because coming up with those poetic like phrases on the fly wouldn't be something I would enjoy.
Maybe it comes with the power suite. Maybe you just learn to do it.
No, I don't know. The Neo is sort of cool, but I didn't quite breaks the game. As a DM myself, is like, just stop it. Eternal Prussia. What are you doing?
How does it break the game?
I think being able to hack an entire army of mechanized things to destroy a town is pretty OP.
We're talking about like classes that can bend the actual laws of physics.
Yeah, but I mean, the Neo then dictated the existence of Eternal Prussia, which is sort of cool, and like
I don't think it dictates the existence of Eternal Prussia. Eternal Prussia and Little England are like the little war's fabric that then the rest of it is built on top of, which is the thing that we should talk about actually, is like the world is actually built sort of like in historical layers of like...
Well, that is...
Well, I mean, a good chunk of it is like Glasstown is the quote-unquote first city, which like...
Yeah, so Glasstown comes first, and then before that there were just lots of mechanized armies fighting each other.
Which is what Little Wars was. It was just like Axis and Allies, but like for people with more money than that.
I don't know. The Neo is cool, but I wasn't into Eternal Prussia and their robotic dragons or whatever it was.
Dude, you're not into Red Eyes Black Metal Dragon?
So the Neo forces Eternal Prussia with the dragons. It forces the zombies to be digital now. They speak binary, Matt. That's sort of lame.
That'll give you, but like...
So they can be hacked. That's the only reason. So, she can hack them.
honestly would not be surprised if that's also part of something that's going to be a bigger thing later on.
Maybe.
Yeah, I definitely think the Fallen it's hinted at being much darker than we'd previously thought.
It also gives me more Digimon vibes, which I'm getting like throughout this series. Actually, like they very much go to the digital world here, right? Right.
Oh, I'd say it's a great analog for it. Yeah.
For the Neo, I guess they did.
John, that was some solid wordplay, by the way.
Thank you.
No, I would be a Godbinder, I think.
That's also a very good one, yeah. I don't think I could play a Fool. I think the Fool would it would be a lot of pressure on you to always be foolish.
To always be dumb.
Yeah. But also, I mean, it strikes me. So there is actually a book series, I think from the 80s. Don't quote me on this. The Guardians of the Flame, I think.
That sounds
which is about some students that are playing a D&D game that one of their professors has written, and then they get sucked into the game. And I think they face similar sorts of challenges, albeit not nearly as interesting, because I think I only read the first book and it's quite a long-running series. But
there are 10 of those books, Jono.
yeah, there you go. I think the key difference is that when they get sucked into the world that their professor creates, they're level 1 characters, which in Dungeons & Dragons is not typically very strong.
Great, right?
Whereas these guys seem to be like, I mean, the Godbinder already has conservatively 4 gods to call on. And the Dictator can, as we see with rather awful consequences, can bind people to stay alive even after they've died.
Yeah, they're fully powered here.
Yeah, I'd say that they're level 20, possibly epic. Yeah, and I think that makes for a more interesting story as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. Matt, did you say which class you would be?
I think I was leaning towards, and you're gonna like, I feel like you're gonna reach through the computer and punch me, Pat. But like, I was leaning towards either some form of knight or a Neo.
Oh man,
the 2 classes you have. It takes all sorts
Classic
for a party,
Matt.
though, right? I really enjoy like the psychology behind the emotion knights, and like the Neo to me is like I enjoy powers that have like inherent limitations in the same way that like I think I would maybe gravitate towards a Godbinder too, of like you have to owe them favors and do things for them, right? It's not just like, hey, I prayed to you, do cool shit for me.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
So like all 3 of those classes kind of have like limitations to them in ways that I think the Grandmaster and the Dictator and the Fool even like don't. Like I don't even know exactly what the Fool's power is, so much as to just like
he's lucky.
Yeah, be super lucky and not die.
In the real world RPG, the Fool gets a 6-sided die and then gets to write a 6 on another side of the die, so they have better chance of rolling 6s.
The Fool is my terrible cleric that couldn't heal anyone in that D&D campaign.
Oh my god, he was worthless, Matt. He was worthless.
So bad.
We all died.
That's always the difficult thing with having a party that can actually have a healer as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
No, my cleric was like the absolute worst, but like was the only character that made it through that session without dying somehow. Bizarre.
You didn't heal us. That's why you were more like concerned about you. I'm surprised you don't want to be the face of the party with the Dictator. I feel like you would be the first one to like try to talk your way out of things.
That's too much emotional manipulation for me, man.
You don't have to use your dictatorship.
I mean, then what are you doing?
Fair enough.
Would the Dictator's powers work on party members?
It did.
I mean, they're
under a chaos at the very beginning.
Yeah.
The Dictator's power works on the Dictator, which is a little scary.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, don't say anything wrong.
Or even like Saul has to bend the rules in that final confrontation because he's so scared of Ash, essentially.
Yeah, which makes me think Ash could have just said, "You want to leave the game now," and he would have just done it. It's like, wow.
The whole story could have been over in issue 1, but A, that's not interesting, and B, like
he could overpower the Grand Master. That's crazy.
I mean, that's cool though, because it shows like the give and take even of these different like quote unquote OP classes too, right? Like where if one of them is OP in one area, the other one like can overpower them in their specific skill, I guess.
Well, in that one, he rewrote the rules of the game to prevent it from happening. So
Sure, but still got 5-figure death punched.
Yeah.
maybe that dagger's a little OP too. I don't know.
It's got no range though.
It has
You've gotta
0
be
range, yeah, Pat.
Very close to the person.
I really love being able to discuss like the game mechanics of it alongside like the actual like storytelling aspect of it. It really just like is my thing in the way that like when you guys let me pick a comic for this session, like this was the comic I was going to pick pretty much hands down, especially because we're all kind of RPG people too.
Sure.
Yeah. No, it's a great. It was a great choice. And I think it was a very good recommendation for this kind of discussion. And I think what I particularly enjoy about Kieron's writing is that most media, when people get sucked into a game, of which there is actually a surprisingly high number of
amount too.
comics and books that deal with that. But mostly people sort of they learn the rules of the game and then they sort of play through it. And I think what I loved about the players in this is that they didn't break the rules, but they did what classically happens with RPG groups, which is they use lateral thinking to just kind of skip large portions of problems.
Yeah. Yeah, the moment where they were like being railroaded by their railroady dungeon master, and they were like, "Actually, let's just mess with his toys, and he'll come to us."
Let's just destroy this town.
I think that sort of brings us to. I want to make sure we talk about Stephanie Hans's art, which is killer throughout this.
It's gorgeous.
Thought about it here is I remember the last basically panel of issue 4 is just like a really like for a lot of it by that point Hans had started like doing defined lines and stuff on people, and in that very last panel of 4 Ash kind of like is radiating
demonic
emotion. Yeah, like the lines are all kind of gone. And that was a really cool take on that panel, and I was kind of just like wondering how you guys felt about A, the art overall, B, the fact that like the color schemes are just like incredible throughout this, even from page to page.
Very bright and colorful. Yes, it contrasts dark with bright splashes of color, and it's really evocative.
Especially issue 1, where even before reading that essay in the back where Stephanie talks about like how she was kind of using like this muted color palette until they got to the world of Die, like you can see it on the page. Like there's that one page basically where Dominic is about to smash Saul's Die.
I love that like that
page is one of my favorite pages.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's a really fantastic sort of marriage between the obviously the hard work of the writer and just the artist. It's one of those partnerships that you can see that they're both kind of on the same page in terms of what they want, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, and it seems like from reading the back matter, like not just Kieron, but Stephanie has like a lot of RPG experience also. So I think kind of knows what she wants to get across with each of these characters too. Like is building details in each of them, like Chuck having his die as like an earring versus the rest of them kind of have them like protected. Chuck is just like throwing his out, here it is to the world basically.
He's the fool.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, right? Like there's lots of little stuff like that I think is artistic choice more than like authorial choice, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, I did enjoy seeing the Wheel of Sacred Emotions on one of the statues. They reference it, and that's obviously the diagram that also determines the grief night, all the different emotional states.
We got to get more nights at some point because like there's no way.
I think we had a joy night, the night of kisses.
And we also had, I feel like we had one other one. They mentioned Rage Night, I think, too, at some point. But.
So that means that some NPCs are the same class as the players, which is interesting.
I mean, apparently, or I mean, maybe they're other players, right? If the Fallen are all other players too, like
they do mention dictators not being trusted, which speaks to there being more than one dictator for sure. Yeah.
So like maybe that's where all of our people are if we run our own game of Die someday. Yeah, I feel like in issue 1, Stephanie's art was maybe like a little bit static to start, but like it definitely picks up.
It's the real world for the most of it, so there's not much.
I was wondering if it was that or if it was just like it took her a little bit to, because I know she does a lot of covers and less like interiors and like actual narrative before this at least.
Yeah. Did any of you notice? I think it's like when the magic die starts going crazy. There's one panel where I think Dominic's hair didn't get drawn in.
Yeah, there was something like that panel. I noticed a couple weird things.
He looks real bald and shocked in that.
I'll need to go back and have a look at that.
I didn't know who it was. That's why I wait, who is that? I
I
had to
had
go
to check
back and
the shirt because I was like, that doesn't look like it's Matthew's shirt from
It's
the previous page.
person standing next to Isabel. Who? Oh my God, it's Dominic. What happened to him?
But this is like all nitpicky nonsense. The book is beautiful.
No, it's one
overall.
strand of hair that you forgot to draw in. But yeah,
Matt, we have to at least say something negative, so it
Come
doesn't
on.
sound like we're being
That's
paid.
true.
For
We have
this
to be
endorsement.
even-handed, right?
But yeah, you can really tell she had lots of fun with Ash's flowing white hair and the red coming out. It's gorgeous every single time.
I mean, even just that first shot of the world of Die, where the whole thing has been kind of tight cuts the whole time of characters' faces and movements, and nothing is really panoramic until that very first shot in the world of Die, where it's a bunch of Lord of the Rings ass statues built into a canyon and them streaking through the sky.
I really liked. There's a panel in issue 3 where there's the dragon. I think it's just standing. It's a static panel, but it's beautiful. It just really, it's just the line art and everything, and it really sort of drives home the difference between what we see as dragons and what the world of Die has as dragons, or particularly at least what Eternal Prussia uses as dragons, the chlorine cordite.
Yeah. Eternal Prussia has 80s ass mecha dragons.
Yeah.
I mean, which makes sense for the time they would have been playing the game, right?
Well, it reminds me of Warhammer and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah,
which I think we've talked a lot about the mechanics and the setup of the thing, so we don't have to touch too much more on issues 1 and 2. Although we should talk about Isabel at some point, because I think Isabel might secretly be my favorite character.
Isabel's pretty great. The fact that she's an atheist who then decided to be a godminder, and her just complete disregard to the gods when she asks them for favors. It's so much fun.
Yes, I enjoy that a lot.
Issue 3 is the mega deconstruction of all the things issue.
Issue 3?
Yeah, issue 3 is the Tolkien / World War I / working class / marriage / so many concepts just thrown on top of each other, and somehow it works.
I'm gonna be honest. I didn't like issue 3. No.
Okay.
Ooh.
Jono?
Well, okay, so what I really loved was the ending of issue 2, where they encounter Selene.
Mm-hmm.
Because before that, they're sort of going, well, we're not going to go through Eternal Prussia because, we'll die, essentially. And then they encounter, obviously, the knight Selene, who has been dead for 23 odd years.
Yep.
But held together by the power of the dictator. And I particularly loved the last line as they're heading into Eternal Prussia, which is, we can survive anything but our past.
Which is the book, right? That's the line that is the book.
It's
Exactly.
a good line, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I think that what I liked about issue 3 is that it felt like it was it almost it was more about the world of Die than about the characters specifically, although they were obviously affected quite badly by what they saw. I still found it very interesting, and I think that was probably where Die really got going for me. I mean, I enjoyed issue 1 and 2, but at that point it was still fairly straightforward until we got to sort of the end of issue 2 going into issue 3 with the hobbits. That I very much enjoyed it.
See, I agreed. I really liked the whole Sir Lane encounter, which, by the way, if you're a dictator and you can control people, telling them not to rest until they lay eyes on you again, how did you think that was a good idea?
You're a shitty teenager, Pat. You're a shitty teenager with emotion control powers. that's what happens. That's what they fucked
But
up.
teenagers realize people go insane if they can't sleep, right?
I don't know if they do.
I don't think that they. Yeah, I think that's kind of more of that selfishness that sort of haunts them for quite a bit of the rest of their lives.
But I liked that. I liked it a lot, even if it was sort of how the heck did he find them right away at that junction? But whatever.
That's a good point. Yeah,
and it was messed up.
Manipulating the entire game.
Right. So the Grandmaster probably placed them there for them to run into, which is fine. Because also the Grandmaster's design. Saul has no eyes. He has D20s.
Yes.
We'll talk about that.
I love that.
So good.
He has a D20 for an eye, and then he has the other D20, which is not what it was previously, because when they tried to leave...
He was just a kid. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
But someone tried to take his D20. He's like, you know where I'm going to keep it? Right there. This one,
Don't need those anymore.
I mean, that also plays into all the eye stuff that like I did actually notice before Ash pointed it out to me in 5.
all the eyeless people. Yeah.
Well, like in 4, when the guy claws his eyes out at the end of the bit where he's casting spells and forgetting memories, and then he kills his Hydra kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, he clawed his eyes out. Like now that's a deliberate choice. Now lots of people are losing their eyes.
The Hobbit.
Also, not Sam. Also lost his eyes by dragging people out of the
ran down his cheeks like tears. Yeah.
So yeah, I think Saul didn't have a great time with his eyes being gouged out. But
well, like I think. Okay, do you think his eyes were gouged out, or do you think he did that to himself at some point?
I think he did it to himself to keep his dice like close.
Well, I would suggest that his eyes were taken from him because both sockets are empty.
Sure.
But I think that's just his die and also the previous Grandmaster's die.
Like the other Grandmaster wanted his die.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then he killed the Grandmaster after a long
like,
war,
no
whichever that meant. It's like, you know what? These are mine.
I do want to know a lot more about like what happened to Saul in the intervening. Like,
I want to know what happened. Like, Sir Lane was awesome and like really impactful, but I want to know what they did. And their choice of not going to the like populated part sort of bummed me out. It's like, no.
We've got 15 more issues. It'll happen.
Okay.
But I think Pat's right though. If we're judging just on this one trade, I was definitely disappointed that I didn't get to see more of that. But that does open the door for some interesting sidetracks down the line.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I don't know. I was pumped issue 1 and issue 2. It was like, oh my god, this great fantastic world with these new characters with the new powers. And then issue 3 comes and this is the Hobbits talking about Tolkien related World War I stuff. Okay. Oh, maybe it's just a little bit of it's the whole issue. Oh, okay.
So I sort of get you, Pat, in that like this is the one that when I read it in the single issues, I was like, I like this, but maybe I'll start like this is when I was like, okay, maybe I'll wait for the trade. But like rereading it, I feel like I got more out of it each time I read it.
It reads like Kieron read a biography of Tolkien.
I mean, he did.
It's like, oh, I finally get what Tolkien was talking about, and I'm going to do a literal representation of his story compared to World War I to really nail it home.
I think that's exactly what happened. But I also think because it's so much of it is this is a world created by teenagers who sort of, they think they know best about all that sort of stuff, and they don't want the
subtlety isn't their thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I get that, and it works sort of as a meta comment on it, but it's still written by a guy that I'm reading a comic book about, so I don't know.
Okay, but Pat, when you turned the page and that eagle was there, you got excited though, right?
No, because that's the biggest meme of Lord of the Rings ever. Why was it brought in?
I think it's brought in for a reason, because it also sets up like without the eagle being there, you don't get the bit at the end where it's like evil Gandalf is sending them off to war and he's making them walk. There are eagles. We all know there are eagles. This is our number one Lord of the Rings complaint.
I didn't like the ending too. It didn't really make any sense.
Oh, I loved the ending actually.
All right.
No, I can definitely see what you mean though.
No, yeah, and I'd like you to elaborate on like it not making sense to you too.
Well, we have all these new characters. Like Ash is part of it, but we don't see anyone else. They're fighting dragons. They're fighting mecha dragons in the background. We don't get to see that. We get to see Ash talking to Frodo. And Frodo's saying, well, I'm going to die and that sucks. And let me write this letter. Let's spend 2 pages about me writing this letter.
But like this story specifically is so much more concerned with like the emotional growth and changes of the characters than fighting a mecha dragon.
Mecha dragons, Matthew.
But I mean, isn't that also like a running theme of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, where they might spend 3 or 4 pages just describing a feast,
sure,
and then like maybe 1 page describing like a fight that happens?
I don't know. What did you get from Ash from that, really? Like, what development? Like, we got that Ash had a relationship and wasn't wearing a ring. So and then she was really up, like, it moved her that these hobbits died for no reason because she used it to make the Grief Knight sad at the end. But other than that, it had no impact on her characters.
I mean, I certainly agree with you on that. And I think you could make the argument that was when sort of Ash decided that, killing your friend is the next best step if that's going to get you out of this. not trying to fix it, more just trying to escape it. Not wanting to see that sort of thing anymore. But I think that even that's a bit of a stretch for issue 3, and I think I do agree with you. It did feel it would have been fine as like a one-shot kind of story about
like a few pages were like, oh my god, these are hobbits in World War One. That's messed up. Would have been fine, but it's the whole issue, and then it ends with the whole trait: who goes into horror on purpose? Only the brave, or whatever it was. It's like, ugh, this is not Band of Brothers. What are we doing?
Look, and I think speaking from somebody who lives in Albany, and Albany has a huge connection to World War One.
Absolutely,
we have a whole museum dedicated to it and things like that. I can definitely understand that kind of thing can be a bit trite when you're thinking about the actual war. It's not just brave people who went; everybody had to go, and so it's almost even as a meta commentary, it might fall slightly short.
I have nothing against writing about the horrors of war, and certainly World War One is horrific, but it's not what I was reading Die for.
I think that's really fair, yeah.
But you enjoyed it, and I can appreciate that too.
No, I mean, like, I completely understand your reaction, and like, I think I had a similar reaction the first time I read it, so I'm trying to figure out like what got me.
I just think if it was another issue of the crazy stuff of issue 2 or issue 4, that would be amazing. Like the crazy stuff, the new like fantastic locations we saw. If that was what we got, would we get hobbits in a trench?
I kind of appreciated backing off the gas a little bit, actually. I feel like.
All right.
But I do actually, like, I will give you this, like, knowing that there are only 20 issues of this comic, because especially on the single issues, it goes, like, through the 20 faces of the die on the back. So, like, each issue is, like, 1 had 1 highlighted and 2 had 2 highlighted, and, like, eventually it'll get to 20 and the series will be done, I think. I don't think that's been confirmed, but, like, that is what makes sense.
The numbers of the issues of the size.
Yeah, and, like, on the back of the trade even, it's a D4, and each trade has 5 issues in it. So, like... So, like, if you only have 20 issues, do we want to spend an issue on this? I argue it's interesting, but, like, it's also very much in my wheelhouse in a way that maybe it's not in other people's wheelhouses also, where it's, like, examining the backstory of just, like...
I'm all for it.
This thing.
But I wasn't for it in this. Like, Star Trek, when they do, like, the crazy, like, comments about what's the point? What's war good for? Absolutely nothing. I'm there for it. But when you got mecha dragons, come on.
No, I understand where you're coming from, but I think I fall on Matt's side for it as well.
Sure. No, fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. It does explain the whole, like, we get to see Tolkien as a master of a realm in a fantasy world.
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah. And I'd be interested to see if there's other wardens that they encounter. And
it
sort of
sounded like each side. Each side of Die has a master of it.
Which also, like, then gets weird to me of, like, there are also other masters, like, being introduced, right? Like, Saul came into this.
Right. I'm like, does that mean Tolkien's running a game for someone? I don't quite, but whatever. It's cool.
Yeah. It's a little bit wishy-washy, but, like, I don't care. Like, that's one of those things that I feel like you don't have to spend time on for me.
Sure. No. He's a master. He's the Aslan of this one little side of Die. It's fine.
Do you think Aslan will feature?
Oh my god, a Narnia-esque
There's
side?
a lot of Narnia references between, like, the quotes on the front of issues and, like, the essays, so it seems possible to me.
Turkish Delight was mentioned, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
All right, so after Hobbits in World War One, we got Glasstown, right?
Glasstown.
Come to Glasstown, that's right.
The first world of Die. Or the first city of Die, right?
Yes.
Yeah, which they've previously, when they were teenagers, they didn't want to go to it because they felt that it would be a bit sort of cliche.
And it sort of is when they get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's kind of interesting to me, though, is like you avoid it as teenagers, but as adults, you like can't help but go there, sort of. Like, it's kind of an interesting comment in and of itself.
Well, kids want adventures, and adults probably like it's a safe city.
Right?
Yeah,
they're
adults,
like, we just need this thing. We need a rest for a minute.
Better place won't kill us right away. Just let's go there.
We already talked about Matthew's stuff in there, so I think we need to talk about like Isabel's stuff for sure, because I think her stuff in this issue sets up her choice in issue 5 really well, actually.
Yes.
I'm going to say, just prefacing this discussion, I did not like Isabel as a character. More that I did not like the character of Isabel. So as a character, understand why you need somebody like that in there. And I certainly felt that, again, much like with Matt, this was a point where I became more interested in the character. So up to this point, I'd largely sort of kind of written her off as being a little bit like just of a stereotypical kind of nasty person, feels a little bit of regret about it, but then as soon as they're back in the world, just goes back to needling Ash. But I will say, definitely felt that Isabel grows once they reach Last Town.
Yeah, I think I was on the same page as you, where earlier on, well, she's described as the bitchy one, like the one who's more often to have a sarcastic comment than anything else. But yeah, this issue where like she's forced to read her diaries to a conclave of worshipers.
I can tell you that would suck. We talked about journaling, right? I don't remember if that was on the recording or not, but
yeah, I think when we were off mic, we talked about journaling, and I think I reflexively clench at the thought of having to stand in front of that many people and read something that I've written.
Especially like if it was the stuff that I wrote 25 years ago. Like if I had to read the like weird angsty essays I wrote in college to people, I would just
clenching even tighter now. Yeah,
I'd be out.
But yeah, also the fact that she's an atheist, and in this world she's seen as either a prophet or maybe even like something holy in and of herself, and people are following her words. Her poorly written diaries when she's a teenager are holy tomes in this world. It's just and she's forced to do it because she's made a deal with the mourner. Is that who it was?
For like completely practical reasons, right? Like not not like I want to inspire these people, like, oh, I owe this god a favor. God, I'm looking at the pages again because I wanted to like look at the exact text she says from her diary, and she just looks so terrified in like all of the first 3 panels on that page.
Yes.
And then she's like, I spent 2 years afraid to hope. The first of my 12 lessons was like, oh my gosh.
For somebody who confesses that, when they're talking run, I think issue 2, about how her fantasies are no longer about running in her world. It's about paying her mortgage and at most to write books. For her to now have these books in our holy tomes, that seems like, fantasy achieved.
Yeah, I hadn't even actually made that connection. She wrote the book 25 years ago. Yeah. Her teenage diary is the book.
Which pays more homage to her change or shift right there at the end, where she says, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't go home yet.
I mean, when they get back to the world, she's the first one who's like, hey, we have to treat this as though it's real, right? Like, we can't be those shitheels who treat it as if it's a fantasy, because, like, it might be real.
Well, she also doesn't have anything in the real world like everyone else has, I don't know, spouses or kids to worry about. She doesn't have anything. She's worshipped in this world, but she doesn't have anything in the other. So why would she go back?
That's exactly right, yeah.
I think without the connection to the people that she makes in this issue, though, that choice would have felt weird to me. In that, like, even the first time I read it, Isabel, like, Chuck being like, hey, let's stay here, felt completely in character to me. And then Isabel being like, we should stay here, though. I was like, that feels like a reach to make a second person say that a little bit. But, like,
she cares for the people. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
She feels like they're following her, and she would feel guilty to, like, they nuked their home, and then they were just going to leave. So
that's totally something a lot of the characters in the parties I've run would do.
Oh, everyone's a murder hobo when it comes to D&D.
Well, there's even that line in the essay not in the back. It's in the issue when Ash is talking about the Neo. He's like, I don't understand why people don't like care about rogues being rogues in D&D. Like everyone is thieves, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's so true, though. Everyone is so ready to kill and then loot off the corpse. So, yeah, it's great.
I definitely have that pull whenever I'm playing in a game. If the easiest solution is to simply, bind somebody up, torture them, or kill them, it generally, because you want to keep the story moving.
Yeah.
You don't want to be collecting 3 keys.
I mean, did I try to shoot someone with a phaser immediately when they started going mad in the last game of Star Trek Adventures we played? I might have done that.
Like, you could talk your way past the armed guards, and yeah, sure, maybe like you wouldn't have to get hurt or anything. But if you kill those 2 guards, you might get experience from killing them and the gold that they're carrying. what's the benefit of not killing them? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the same time, I think you and I have talked about this specifically, Pat. Like, whenever we play like a BioWare game or whatever, like it's very difficult to make like a Dark Side run or a Renegade run because I feel very bad.
Oh, Mass Effect! I can never kill
Yeah.
Morden. No, can't do it.
I mean,
So
I
I'll
did
never
that.
do
though.
Renegade. You're a
I have to
horrible
watch
person.
the YouTube videos. I have to watch the YouTube videos of that. I can't do it myself. I can't. I can't betray Rex because then you have to kill him later on.
Exactly.
None of these things work for me.
Yeah. So like I don't know. I mean, even as like people who like play games in real life, like we have limits, I think, overall.
Sure, and it depends on the person running the game to make you actually invested in the world so much that you won't just kill any.
Yeah, that either A, you feel like a shitty person, or B, you feel the consequences of having done the terrible thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so also in that issue, we get the story of how evil this new Grandmaster Saul is, because those wizards were acting up. And it was interesting they explained how magic worked originally for the wizards, where they could cast any spell they want, but they forget the spell and have to relearn it the next time they want to cast it, which is interesting.
I mean, which is kind of a D&D thing, right? Like you have to re-prepare spells.
You have to prepare spells every day, yeah.
Yeah. And then Saul made the twist that in addition to relearning the spell, you also forget a memory. Just a random memory. You don't know what. And it like goes through this story of this wizard who's trying to rescue his children who were turned into a Hydra for whatever reason. And it was really moving. It's like, oh, the last spell he cast, he forgot his kids were the Hydra in that cage. And then he had a Hydra in the cage. So
he does what heroes do.
May as well kill them. But wouldn't he remember he was on a quest for those Hydras, though? He might not know that whatever, it's fine. No, it's fine.
I mean, if he doesn't know they're his kids, like, what reason is there to not? I mean, we just talked about, like, shoot first, ask questions later, right, is the default.
Sure, but, like, he just rode across the thing. He froze a lake. He, like, fought some things to get to that cage to save these Hydra. He doesn't realize they're his kids, but wouldn't he still save the Hydra? I don't know.
I mean, maybe he never thought of them as, like, the
He would still remember that he was doing the thing, though, right? Like, he didn't forget why he was there.
That's less interesting narratively, Pat.
It's true. It makes a better story that he just forgot and then slaughtered them because it's a dirty Hydra. But still.
Yeah, and that's the story where I started, like, I really picked up on the eye stuff and kind of how that was all going to tie back into Saul, too. And, like, how he's kind of afraid of, like, not being able to function, I think, in the real world. It's, like, his number one fear, basically.
I mean, he wouldn't, right? Like 27 years away from the world, I don't think he would function very well.
No, it would definitely take a lot of effort and adjustment.
I mean, especially after having Grand Master powers in
being
the land you were in.
Yeah. I also I hate to drag us back, but the art style shifts ever so slightly for the Archmage story, and I really was on board for that as well.
Yeah, all the flashbacks get like a little bit flatter and they're pretty cool. Yeah, even the one with Sir what's his face, Yane or whatever. Sir Lane, yeah. Yeah,
and then Matt tells his story about when he was bravest, which is, like we said, very touching.
So good, yeah. With Dower the dwarf.
Yeah, the two stereotypical dwarves just come down and start talking to him because, of course, they do.
They're pretty good.
But I did find the fairy gold thing quite sweet when he hands over the fairy gold, because he was planning on using it to cheat the barman out of his drinks. But I found it quite sweet, and then being reunited with Case, the dog, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, because they explained earlier on that the sister came to the birthday party because their dog had just recently died, and he was trying to
get a fantasy dog.
So of course, in that game, she's like, you know what? I get my dog back. So.
But with the twist that she has to pay for the dog every morning or watch him die.
Right. Like, if she doesn't get the gold again, he dies in front of her again. Which is, of course, Kieron. Of course that dog dies again.
Yeah, right.
Not only is she an addict, like, looking for her next hit, her dog's life is...
Her dog needs a hit also.
She has a constant source of trauma. Yeah.
Which is what it means to be an adult, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
We didn't really touch on the fact that she lost an arm, too. Like...
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Out of all of the players, she's the one that lost the most physically from her time
they don't
in
really
Die.
Get to it till this issue. They're like, oh yeah, we should probably talk about like all of Angela's stuff.
Right.
Angela was a very interesting character. Yeah. And I very much look forward to learning more about both in the game and also what she was coping with outside of the game.
Right. Yeah. Well, she had the whole thing about her marriage is falling apart because she left her husband for a woman, and then the woman backed out of that relationship. So now she's like stuck in a nasty separation with her husband. It's messy.
And she's supposed to be picking up the kids when she gets sucked into the game world. So that's a whole crazy ticking clock of things on you.
Yeah, no, no one's life is great, and they're trying to make.
Notice how even in like this issue, that's a lot about like going into people's backstories and stuff, to the point where even Chuck kind of gets like a moment, like Ash kind of dodges her moment.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that Ash recognizes that she hasn't apologized to her sister, and she's like, I should do that now, and then she doesn't. Also Isabel walks in and says like the very quote unquote woke thing about like, hey, we should talk about like your fluid gender and sexuality and what's going on with that, because we're at the pub and that's a good place to do these sorts of things. Yeah,
which, like, I really enjoy.
And we now have the vocabulary to talk about those things as well,
which like didn't exist in the 80s when they would have done this.
And Ash just completely dodges the question, even in her own like personal monologue. She doesn't like give an actual answer. It's like,
which I think is fine, honestly. Like I kind of like the non-answer, which usually I think it would frustrate me, but I think the fact that she talks about like the thinking that goes into her like not wanting to define it made it work for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure.
But again, we still just know like the absolute least about Ash, even to the point where like we get non-answers to questions in this set of friends needling at the pub scenes.
And we saw that she has had romantic trysts with men as a woman in this world.
Yeah.
Sir Lane was, so Ash is an enigma.
I feel like she and Matt had a thing somehow. I don't know. I just like, I have this
I would say that is there is a suggestion of that, definitely.
You think Matt? I think for sure Saul and her.
Yes.
And Dominic.
I think that there was the potential for something with Saul and Dominic. And then, whether or not they ever actually got to do anything, because then the game happened.
Right. Exactly. Well, in the beginning, the game is made for Dominic. Like he made this game, which did he make this game? Because the game existed before. That's a whole thing. Like, where did the dice come from? Was this game existing before? Because there's a grandmaster when they came in.
It's an interesting set
of claims to have made it.
Yeah.
Answer to, yeah.
Okay, but so he says, "I made this game for you." And then what's really moving is after the final, the interstitials after the end of the comics, where they show like younger selves in the real world doing things that like relate to their characters.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really great. Like it shows Dominic and his sister playing a video game, or Chuck with his boombox radio. But the last one after Ash just stabbed Solomon and killed him, it's a cute picture of Dominic and Solomon playing game like really close to each other. So I think they're really getting that there might have been a romantic like tension, if not actual relationship between them.
Yeah. And so then you think back to Sir Lane. How would Sol have coped being in the party when that was going on?
Right.
Yeah.
Potentially that was why Sir Lane pops up straight away as soon as they're back in the world.
Throws it back in her face immediately. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, I think that takes us pretty cleanly into issue 5, which is like the cliffhanger that makes me want the next issue immediately.
Issue 5 was interesting. I think I still feel that they went pretty quickly from our friend Solomon is alive to, all right, we've killed Solomon, now we can go back to the real world.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the end of issue 4 through 5, Ash is not a good character.
No, definitely not.
She knows that though. She's scared of becoming that person again, and then like has to become that person in order to get out.
I'm pretty sure Ash is an evil character. So
I would agree with you. Yeah,
like maybe neutral evil. Well, willing to do bad things to get their way is neutral evil. So I feel like that fits Ash pretty well.
We're not allowed to use alignments. Kieron Gillen said he doesn't like.
I don't care what Kieron likes or not. He wrote a thing about hobbits I wasn't hot on. So, but no, Ash does. This is her plan through and through. So
I mean, but like does not want to kill Saul, is left with that as pretty much an only option.
Saul did force her hand literally, so
Yeah.
I get it. It's like, you know what? Let's just kill him. He's dead now. He wasn't going to come with us
Yeah.
anyways. And everyone's so shocked too in that next scene. Like when she looks back at everyone else, they're just like, you just killed him.
I mean, but like
Yeah.
Ash has been thinking about this since issue 1, right? Like when Ash was like, it's not war yet, and then you hear her monologue and she's like, that yet is pretty loaded. Like, you're pretty clued in by like right there that like if it comes to it, Ash is gonna do what needs to be done.
Sure, but when you're a dictator and you can just command people to do things, wouldn't you just like shut him down for the requisite amount of time and then?
I mean, not during daytime in Glasstown though.
I know, but how long is daytime in Glasstown? Is it daytime for years? Who knows? It's the refracting out of the protective glass. It stays. But no, it's a pretty epic final issue for the trade.
Definitely. I think really enjoyed the hacking of Eternal Prussia as well. I like the idea of that sort of the weird shaped bunker that the Neo breaks into.
I mean, Jono, you were talking about lateral thinking earlier, and like the lateral thinking on display in this issue is just like crazy sauce. It's like we have to break the barrier, destroy the town, also save all the townspeople. How do we do all those things? And also then like actually fight Saul once Saul shows up.
I would suggest that it's only because of the character development that Isabel goes through that saving the town people actually even features on that list.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think in the first place, again, Isabel was the one who was like, hey, we have to treat it as though it's real. So like, I think regardless, Isabel would have figured something out. I think it's much more pressing to her in light of the like reading her diary that she had to do.
Yeah, we get the Neo hacking Eternal Prussia to attack Glasstown. And then we get Ash and Matt heading down to like destroy the protective barrier, which guarded by golems who have the face of a bully from high school or whatever it was.
Yes, and again, you don't see Matt killing them, but yeah, all you see is the result.
Right, Matt fucks things up.
Yeah,
you won't like him when he's sad.
I mean, this time willingly though, which is a pretty big change.
Sure. But then they destroy the barrier, and then Isabel the Godbinder makes a deal to create a magic passageway to get everyone out of town.
And earns a favor in response, which
doesn't
turns
even
out to
have
be
to
pretty
really
important.
make a deal, yeah.
Yeah, which I enjoyed. I mean, Glasstown pays off a lot of her debts, yeah.
And then Chuck is Chuck. Hey, your game sucks.
So let's talk about Chuck. Because I feel like he is the one who there's definitely more going on. I think we can agree beneath the surface of Chuck.
Maybe,
but maybe not at the same time. He's the one who's done the best out of the situation. We can all agree. Like he's made Portal of Pain, which is his book and movie deal, I presume, and potentially games as well. It's not quite clear. But also for some reason decides that he also wants to stay in the game world. So, you know, what would you say his motivations are?
That's the thing, right? Is like, even if he can do push-ups and stuff again, like if he actually enjoyed his life outside the world, he's not going to stay in the game world.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's growing older. In this world, he's a paragon or whatever they call him. Beautiful women will throw themselves at him.
And then he will stab them.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, when he's talking to Angela in issue 4 and he's saying like, I wasn't that shit of a boyfriend, was I? And she's like, yeah, you were. And like, he knows he was. He's just like, he's kidding around.
He's self-aware, yeah.
Dude's on his second wife. Like, I don't know, like I feel like he has a little bit more going on than he just wants to do push-ups, but we'll see.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see, yeah.
Maybe. I hope so.
And also, just as we see, he's the first person to recognize the threat that Ash poses when they decide to not leave the game.
Yes.
Because he immediately has a gun on her.
Also, there are guns in this world, which you know.
Yeah, that was the other thing.
I mean, Eternal Prussia has like tanks, right? Then like metal dragons.
Mecha dragons. But it looks like a revolver. I don't know. It's a revolver. It's just. But yeah, he pulls a gun.
6 shots, you know.
6 shots, D6, yeah.
Hey.
It's that kind of stuff that makes me just want to like slam my head into my computer and never write again.
But I mean, I think looking at what they've built, what they've had to build on, I think, it's those little details are so perfect.
Yeah, I love the dice and die, and just like everything is so perfectly just meshes. It's pretty great. But yeah, so they kill Saul. Oops, he was a player. He's coming back. He's fallen now. Oh no.
Did you guys see that coming? That like the players become fallen?
I did not. No, that was actually quite a twist for me. Yeah.
My question is, as the Grand Master, he still got those dice in his eyes. Can he still bend the rules of the game?
Dude, I have no idea.
Do they now have an undead Grand Master to deal with?
I would be very surprised if he doesn't come back. Yeah.
Well, like, who is the Grandmaster now? Also, right? Like,
is the Grandmaster even dead?
I think he would be fallen as well, but he doesn't have his dice, which means he probably can't use his abilities.
So Saul does say that the fallen fade over time as well, so he would potentially have quite a limited window with which that he could, or maybe he just bends that rule.
That's interesting, actually. And like, I read some bits about the Fallen in the RPG, but I didn't read. Like, I read that like because in the RPG you can fail to grab your die basically. So like, if you don't grab your D12 right away, you won't become a Godbinder, and like you could be a Fallen who's a normal human, which is a shit way to live because like you have no power and like you have no stats basically.
Oof, yeah, I would hate not to do that.
So I mean, I guess that would assume that like if you do grab your die, you do retain some of those powers as a Fallen, though I would guess they're limited.
He's got double Grand Master ability still. That's a little scary.
That is a very. I had not even considered that, Pat. That is a very good point.
He's a little pissed off now too, so I don't know.
Yeah, turns out he's dead.
Yeah, imagine so.
I don't know. Like, I got to the end of this and I was like, oh, okay, this isn't exactly what I thought. Like, I thought there was going to be more. I thought it was going to be more of the stuff that issue 4 was going to like push them on, like the railroady quest. Like, they're going to visit all these different aspects of the world together stuff, right? Because like we saw the Tolkien / World War I area, and like we saw Glasstown, and then to have them like straight up divided at the end, like
they split the party. You don't do that. They split the party, and then Ash says, "You know what? We could just kill those other two, and then they don't get a vote."
That's not what Ash says. That's what Saul says Ash is saying.
No, that's exactly what she's saying.
No, it's not.
If they all die, we can go home.
Yeah.
How is that not? We can kill them and we can go home.
If they get killed by Red Eye's Black Metal Dragon, you can go home. You don't have to murder.
Also, wouldn't Ash just say, "You guys want to go home"? I mean, we talked about this right at the beginning. Like, isn't that just like the easiest dictator thing to do?
Yes, which I like. Ash would have loved to do for Saul, but couldn't. I think.
Yeah.
I think Ash is saying we can kill them.
Okay, I'm flipping open the book again now because I'm pretty sure you're reading into it.
No, she just killed Solomon because Solomon didn't want to go home.
As a last resort.
I would probably agree with Pat.
Had two other people run away. It's like, you know what? If we kill them, we can go home. She's promised Matt that she's getting him home.
And it's not like Chuck didn't pull a gun on her, you know? It's kind of...
I think she's chaotic evil, and or neutral evil. She's leaning toward chaotic. Got to watch out.
I'd say lawful evil because she has a very specific goal in mind, and she's not afraid to to use any means. Yeah, bring Matt home.
I said Solomon was lawful evil. That's sort of a question mark though, because he can write the laws.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can agree that much like representation in the book, that morality in this is certainly a spectrum.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is an entire book about people changing over time, right? Like, that's the whole thing, is like you throw these people who were teenagers in this world back into this world 25 years later, and the way they've changed informs like their decisions and interactions, basically. Like,
it really is what they say, you can never go home. I think he says that that's the new age of the story that they're entering, the sepia age. You know, all of their memories are colored by time, and I think that definitely rings true for a lot of the black and white morality that they may have seen before sort of pales into much darker shades of gray when you've got like undead knights who you, as a joke, said that they would not be able to rest until they laid their eyes on you again, that sort of thing.
Yeah, like, and didn't even think about the consequences of it, and then here you are 25 years later.
25 years of dead flesh.
It's interesting they killed off the antagonist. Kieron just... I don't know if he's going to be the antagonist still, because, yeah, he might still have his Grandmaster abilities, but I felt like it sort of shifted the antagonist from Saul to Ash.
Okay, oh man,
I would disagree. I think that that's not an unreasonable. I don't think that's an unreasonable reading at all. I think that Ash is prepared to do what it takes, and that is a very dangerous position for somebody to take in, especially in somewhere where they've got that sort of power.
She just destroyed a city, was going to leave before she helped the people who city was destroyed.
They
she
all
killed
destroyed
a man.
the city.
But it was her idea.
Yeah, and when people said maybe we should wait and help these people, she was like, no, we have to leave. So, not good actions. I don't know.
I will give you, like, one of the reasons she wants to leave is because she's afraid of the person that staying will turn her into, but, like, the actual choice to leave is a shitty choice at that point, too.
I'm getting the sense that as the story goes, Matt and Angela are going to turn against Ash because they're going to be repulsed by the actions she's taking.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I would definitely agree, yeah.
I think by the end, Ash is going to be the antagonist.
I hope we still experience the story through Ash's perspective, though, because I've really enjoyed that. I wouldn't mind jumping to the other characters, but I think I would find it very compelling to continue reading as Ash slowly becomes changed by the world, much in the same way that we believe Solomon was.
Especially with the party split now, we're going to have to jump to someone else's perspective, right? Like,
yeah.
Because we can't do the...
Yeah, we'll get an Isabel Chuck. Yeah.
And definitely more hobbits, right? I mean, that has to happen.
I just hope so, because they've got
so
many other stories. If you go to Rivendell, it'd be great.
But I do think that it does seem like the wizard will pop back up again as well.
Maybe. I think that might just be a one-off. Might be done.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't have a ton else to talk about. I think we should talk about the fact that the design for, like, the logo design for the series is literally a deconstructed D20, and that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, so many cool touches. Yeah.
All the dice are all over the place, but yeah, the front logo is just a D20 broken up.
Literally deconstructing the genre.
Well, there's that panel, I think, at the end of 2, where it's the few sides of the D20 meeting, and you've got the barbed wire, you've got the ocean, and then you've got the sand, all on different sides of it, and that's really beautiful.
Yeah, I'm excited. I want to read more.
Yeah, definitely. So you would recommend this then, Matt?
Yes.
You have recommended
I mean, I forced you two to read it, so yes, I would recommend it.
Forced is a very strong word. I was very happy to read this, yeah.
I'm glad you like I texted Pat today and I was like, because we hadn't actually talked about this, and usually we talk about the book a little bit via text message before we recorded, and I'm like, I texted Pat and I was like, I'm scared to ask whether you liked it, because if you don't like it, I feel like I don't want to talk to you.
Too many hobbits.
Too many hobbits. And that's a fair criticism, I think.
Yeah, I would agree, actually. 4 hobbits is too many hobbits.
No, but I mean, I think I hadn't thought about issue 3 through the way that you described it, Pat, and I can certainly see what you mean as well. Like, I think rereading it, I probably would find it a bit jarring, and I would feel a little bit disappointed that I wasn't learning more about the characters and their powers.
I think as its own piece, it's great. Like, I enjoyed it. It's referencing the Tolkien story that I know. But in context of this, I found it lacking.
Pat, I don't know if you noticed that the wedding ring is the one ring in there. Maybe that is.
Oh, I did, Matt. I did.
Not sold on that either.
So there was actually a line in the essay for that issue where Kieran's like, it's either really good or really bad, and I'm not sure which it is.
No,
like,
I read that too. It's like, yeah. Okay.
Got some news for you, Kieran.
But so, Jono, this was like a good return to print comics for you.
Absolutely, yes. I would happily recommend it to people who play RPGs, and I would definitely recommend it just for. I think it's a good. It's almost like a Stephen King story, like It, where you have that time jump and the nostalgia and the loss and these people kind of going, well, maybe if we fixed the problem when we were young, we wouldn't now be having this years later, and I really, really appreciate and enjoy that aspect of it.
Yeah, I think I would also recommend it. I was, like Matt was saying, we talked beforehand. I'm not sure which I would say is better, the Wicked and Divine series that Kieron has done or this one. I went back and read the first volume of Wicked and Divine, and that's real good too.
It is really good.
But I don't think you can go wrong by reading both, so let's just read both. Read both.
I'm going to pick up Wicked and Divine next.
Yeah, do it.
It's actually, it wraps up, I think, next month. The next to last issue just came out like last week as we're recording this. So
I know, I thought I was caught up in trades, and all of a sudden there's 2 more trades to get. It's like, oh god, they're cranking them out.
I mean, at this point, man, you could just wait. The thing's gonna be wrapped up, and like you can probably get all the trades in a couple months.
It's interesting because it's got a lot of the same fields. It's people gaining godlike abilities suddenly, and like what it means in the real world, like in context to their real lives and what it does and what it does to people around them. So it's similar in that sense, but it's young people. It's like teenagers or like early 20s going through it. So they're doing like hormonal things or like more emotional acts with their crazy powers.
So, like, building on that, actually, my first Kieron Gillen series, which is also a Gillen and Jamie McKelvey series, like Wicked and the Divine is, was their Young Avengers at Marvel. And this feels like the book you would write, like, 10 years after writing Young Avengers.
The not-so-young Avengers?
Yeah, right? Like, where it's like Young Avengers, but turns out they figured out that they did dumb shit when they were young.
Yeah.
Like... Young Avengers is really good, though. I love that book to the point where, like, that's why I read Wickdiv, and then Wickdiv is why I read this, essentially.
No, that's a good recommendation. I'll definitely take that up.
Well, wait, I've got like tons more because this is so good. Like, if you like the whole role-playing aspect, I think Rat Queens is pretty fun.
So is that Rat Queen?
Rat Queens, which sort of plays off of the Dungeons and Dragons party trope. And there's a character in it, Hannah, who is like the sorceress of the group. Reminds me a whole lot of Ash.
Yeah, sort of. Rat Queens runs into issues, though, later on.
Yeah, Volume 1 and 2 is really great for Rat Queens. Volume 3 wasn't great, and I haven't read anything after that, so...
Oh, that's cool. I'm happy to pick up the first 2 trades, yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. It's more of a lighthearted story than this, which I guess wouldn't take much.
I don't understand how you don't think Hobbits dying in a trench is lighthearted, Pat.
I did have a good laugh when Sam died after saying I always wanted to see an elf, so
a hearty chuckle.
No, the webcomic that I would recommend, which is sort of similar in the fact that it's a young woman who gets thrown into a fantastical land and has to deal with that kind of world that she's in now, is Kill 6 Billion Demons.
That already sounds great.
It's amazing. The beginning is a little rough, but give it like a few pages and you'll.
I was gonna say I still have to get past that beginning because you've recommended.
You really do, Matt. It's.
I trust your judgment, so I will get past it eventually.
It gets so good, and the art is amazing. It's one person. They write and illustrate, and it's just gorgeous. So yeah, get past the first rough pages, and you'll be set for a while.
I'm on board, and I've read webcomics where the art has improved, like just on a completely different level from the first few pages. So I am used to sort of working my way through those. Yeah. If I was to recommend something that is similar to this in the sort of somebody getting sucked into a role-playing game and then using their sort of game master knowledge to sort of play the rules, it's called Earth World. That's ERF World, all one word. It's a webcomic, and it's much more lighthearted than Die, that's for sure. But it still sort of does sort of kind of do get the guy kind of gets to grips with the fact that he is he's a general, and sometimes people will die under his command, and it's good. It's much more sort of he's more playing a kind of strategy game with units and things like that, and it's still got some really great moments. I think one of my favorite parts is that some of the creatures are like marshmallow peat dragons and things like that.
Great.
So yeah, highly recommend Earthworld. And one that's probably a little bit less about, it's more game referencey, but it's still quite good in some of its commentary. It's now finished. I think it's been finished for years, but it was 8-Bit Theater. And basically this guy was using Final Fantasy sprites to make a comic, and it's very, very enjoyable,
Nice.
start to finish. Evil black mage doing evil things and often suffering as a result.
So, like, in some cursory Googling, that's potentially by the same writer as Atomic Robo, Jono. Did you know that?
That is exactly the same writer. That's how I found out about Atomic Robo. And he also does a few other funny one-shots like Warbot and accounting and things like that. I don't know how doesn't look like on his website that he's been keeping up with most of his stuff. I think Atomic Robo probably takes all his time.
Yeah, they've been putting out a lot of Atomic Robo, and like that's also now in webcomic form.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, no, I highly recommend those two. And if you really want to read more about D&D stuff, there is the Guardians of the Flame thing, but I don't know that I could recommend it because I could only get past book 1.
Sure.
So I have like a D&D adjacent book recommendation, actually. Like, this is my non-comics recommendation for this. In the back matter, Kieron Gillen talks about some of the books he was reading as like inspiration and research for it. And his like role-playing history book, it seemed like was 5 books in one, and that sounds like a lot. I randomly happened across one at the library this summer that I really liked, which is called Of Dice and Men. And that was like really readable. Like, I think I read it over the course of a weekend. And it's like a very good quick history of all the stuff that sort of leads into D&D being created and then kind of like becoming the phenomenon that it is now,
Cool.
essentially. It talks about all that like Little Wars stuff, and then the first playtest where like Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson are like getting together and like basically mashing their
Like
rules
Geneva,
together.
Wisconsin. Yeah.
All that good stuff. Represent.
One last one for me.
Okay.
Sandman Volume 5. If you want to just pick up Volume 5, don't worry, you don't have to read any other ones. That might be a lie. I don't remember.
Can I pick up a volume of Sandman without having picked up other volumes of Sandman?
This one, honestly, is pretty much standalone. Volume 5 is
I think I've got the first 2 essential Sandman.
Ooh, nice. Yeah, it might be included. But it's a game of you, and it's its own like standalone story about Barbie is her name. She has an imaginary world, and the characters from it appear in the real world, and like it gets really crazy. And it reminded me a little bit of this story. Like, there's even a trans character in it, which I thought was an interesting.
Yeah, I do recall that. Yeah.
So yeah, that if by any chance you have Sandman, or if you want to pick up Volume 5, it sort of stands by itself, and it's a trip.
That is an excellent recommendation. I do remember that story, and it was very, very good.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's going to do it for this month's discussion of Die. As always, if you want to get in touch with Pat or me, you can find us on Twitter as @thehypnotoad, which is spelled very poorly, and @MattLedge, which is MAT_LEDGE, respectively. You could also email us at waitingonthetrade@gmail.com and read more comics-related goodness at mattreadscomics.com, where we actually have a link to our newly launched TeePublic store.
Get that merch while it's hot.
Get that merch. You can get mugs, stickers. I'm going to buy myself a mess of stickers, by the way.
Oh, yeah, the stickers are going to be great.
Stickers are good. Jono, where can people find you online, assuming you want to be found?
Well, I have an Instagram account that people can find me at Jonathan Gurney. It's just photos of my cat and my dog and a few other things. So it's not particularly exciting, but people are welcome to find me on there if they want.
It is the purest form of Instagram, though, right?
The best way to use it.
All right. Well, thanks, Jono, for coming on and talk Die with us. I had a fantastic time talking about this series, which I've wanted to just like blabber about for the last couple months. So I'm really glad you guys could both hop on and talk with me about it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, guys. It's been a real pleasure. Yeah.
Join us next month when we'll be talking about Wotakoi, Love is Hard for an Otaku with Bryce Manning.